Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome to Remastering Dragapult EX, the ultimate guide to play what I think is the strongest deck to play right now in Standard. Now, about a year ago, I did my first mastering guide to Dragapult EX, and you guys seem to absolutely enjoy this one. So in today's video, I'm doing a refresher as the deck has come in leaps and bounds since it was first revealed. So in today's video, I'm going to break down exactly why you should be playing Dragapult EX and the different strategies this deck can really employ. Look at the different partner Pokemon, what are the Pokemon that really making Dragapult EX click to be one of the strongest decks to play right now in the Standard. Let's also look at the argument to see which is the best ace spec to play. Should you be playing Unfair Stamp or Sparkling Crystal? Give pros and cons for both sort of options. Let's also look at some deck lists, which lists have done really well at some major events. So that's also where I'm personally at with my own Dragapult EX list. That's also the biggest threats Dragapult is now facing in this brand new Standard format. Is it just Lily Clefairy EX, or is it other likes like the Poison Package or Welsh Mask Ogerpon? So that's also sequencing. This is a huge key source strategy, which is great to learn about, and it would be perfect for you to know exactly what you should be doing first. Serendipity, Ultra Cloak, and other sort of sequencing options as well. Plus also an in-depth matchup guide as well. So it's also looking at some of the top sort of decks as well, the ones you'll be facing a lot more, and how you can best execute the strategy as Dragapult EX. So without further ado, let's jump right into the guide. So of course the big thing is, why on earth should you be playing Dragapult EX? And it has one of the best attacks right now in the game. Phantom Dive does 200 damage and you get to put 6 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon any way you like. This is obviously perfect because it sets up so many different sort of KOs. You can remove any of the big sort of baby basic Pokemon. Think about like some Rolts, Dusknoirs, but also your opposing GPs as well. Set them up to be KO'd in the later style game. But also you can get these big sort of 200 damage, which is obviously incredibly powerful. You're two-shotting everything in the format, and you have 320 HP, which can be very difficult for certain archetypes to actually one-hit KO you in response. And it's a deck which really thrives from being behind. It takes full advantage of this one. You have so many great sort of comebacks of cards. Think of the likes of Countercatcher, Iona, as well as also having the likes of Unfair Stamp as well and Serendipity, so you have a good sort of draw engine as well against your opponent, especially if you are behind. But also just spreading the damage around, make sure you can set up these KOs in the later sort of game. Like I mentioned before, the 6 damage counters can be very crucial. You can set up the KOs on some of these setup Pokemon as well. Think of like some Latias, Serendipity, the Ogerpons, or some other sort of attacking options which have a little bit more HP than you think about it. Feeling like some Miraidon and Iron Hands. Putting those 2 to 3 sort of damage counters on this one, make sure that Phantom Dive can get a one-hit KO response later on in the game. But also, if the deck absolutely thrives with the item locking Badoo, both against and if against Badoo, so it's also your as playing Badoo. Obviously, Badoo, we saw how much it shined in that Prismatic Evolution sort of format. You obviously have an amazing inbuilt draw effects engine with having that Draw Cloak. It's your stage 1. Why do you think Gardevoir did so well with that refinement earlier? Having the Draw Cloak as your stage 1 with an amazing sort of draw factor is incredibly crucial. But also, it's a deck which really rewards players that put the time into this one. Now, I've been playing Dragapult pretty much non-stop since the end of December last year, and I feel like I've come in leaps and bounds to be a much stronger Dragapult EX player. And what makes it even stronger is you can win from just as little as 2 Phantom Dive. If you spread the amount of damage counters around, know when you're going to be using the right sort of Dusknoir and or Dusclops, you can pretty much win on the spot just like that. And that's incredibly powerful. So this gives a little bit of an oversight about why Dragapult EX is so strong. It has an amazing attack, it's great under item lock, has inbuilt draw engine in its evolution line. But let's actually look at the partner Pokemon and have an in-depth sort of look about how it really helps with Dragapult EX's strategy. The first one is of course that Draw Cloak. It's stage 1 Pokemon, and it's the inbuilt draw engine of the deck with Recon Directive. Let's you look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one of them in your hand and one of them in the bottom of the deck. Now I think this is amazing for sequencing, which we're going to touch on just a little bit later on as well. Why is it so good? Well, you've got to know exactly if you, for example, have 2 energies in your hand from a Recon Directive, you put one bottom, one into your hand, and you know, potentially if you're Crispin, you're already having it out for finding an energy potential. Or if you get some sort of key cards you don't really want to draw into it, you have a stronger high of drawing into some cards you want to, from like some Research and Iona, which I think is really, really good. It's also very searchable because you have a ton of sort of good sort of key sort of cards like TM Evolution, Shock, Brock Scouting, but without TM Evolution, it can actually be quite hard to just manually draw into this one. That's why some decks really implode into going into that research, going into their Brock Scouting, because Brock Scouting, yes, it's great under item lock because you can guarantee you can get your Cloak, but also you can get your Dreepies as well, as you can't, as they've been denied from having that Buddy Puffin. But also, it's great to have a few more on the bench. You want to have that inbuilt draw factor. You'll be using Badoo pretty much the first few sort of turns, so you want to establish an amazing board sort of state, and that's where your Cloak really comes into shine. Draw it into this one. It helps fight sort of the Badoo from your opponent, also that late game Iona as well. But another sort of good key cards as well is, of course, that Dusknoir, as well as also Dusclops. I'm combining them both into this. They obviously help get these big KOs with that Curse Blast ability. Dusclops gets to put 5 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, and you have Dusknoir with Curse Blast doing 13 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Now, obviously, this is incredibly powerful. It makes your opponent take some prizes, which obviously is great for Iono, lowering the hand size. So you could potentially use 2 Dusclops or one Dusclops and one Dusknoir. Your opponent takes 2 prizes. Then you can Iono them. All of a sudden, they're drawing 2 less cards, and then you can potentially spread loads of damage counters with your Dragapult, and you may take 4 sort of prizes then and there. Also, it unlocks the attacking with Blood Moon even sooner. Blood Moon has the amazing ability, amazing attack, but it has a quite hard ability to kind of go through this one. You want your opponent to take as many prizes as possible before you chuck an attack with Blood Moon Ursaluna. And so the key to a strategy is about knowing which one you should be going with. Dusclops is more to setting up the KOs for later on. They obviously work well with removing some of the Hootuts, removing the Dreepies, removing the Roltzes, all these sort of setup Pokemon as well. We can obviously go with that one, but also it can help get these big setups in the later style game. And Dusknoir is really there mainly to take that big one-hit KO. 13 damage is quite a lot. You're KOing likes of Monkey Dory. You're KOing the likes of setting up some KOs on Mew or Clefairy on the bench, or even likes of Gardevoir or Charizard if it's in the active spot, especially if in the mirror as well, removing that Dragapult. So obviously that's a good sort of strategy you want to think about this one. Dusknoir's a guaranteed KO, and Dusclops is really for that setup. But another sort of damage spreading you really have is Hawlucha. Now, of course, we've lost the likes of Rain and Alakazam, which was obviously amazing, moves that damage counter around this one. So we now have Hawlucha with that fine entry ability. When you play this Pokemon from your hand, from your bench, choose 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon and put 1 damage counter on this one. This is obviously great because it puts that 1 damage counter, which can be critical for taking away those 2 price liabilities. Think about the Serendipity, Ogerpon, Latias, all these Pokemon with 210 HP, you can just instantly put that 10 damage. So now all of a sudden, Phantom Type is actually one hit KOing them. You don't have to worry about spreading them and then go for the KO later style on. Or it's perfect at these 70 HP evolving basics. I mentioned before, Rolls, Hootuts, they kind of go more towards the 80 HP one, but if they still play a 70 HP one, the Charmanders, the Dreepies, all of these Pokemon do have come from that 70 HP basic. So this is obviously perfect, the fine entry, put the damage counters on this one, and then you can get these big KOs later on. Or if you're behind in prizes, you could put the count, or you have a lot of counter catcher, you could Serendipity, put 10 on Serendipity, 10 on opposing Dreepy. Also, then you can counter catch a Serendipity and take 3 prizes that sort of way. Obviously, this is very, very powerful. It is going to be a bench liability, but I tell you now, it is very, very powerful for that strategy to spread the damage counter on to unlock Phantom Type, take even more KOs. But let's talk about Budew, one of the best sort of partners as well under the likes of Dusknoir. It is the best starter right now and setup Pokemon with that Itchy Pollen attack for no energies, 10 damage, and the opponent can't play any item cards. It's obviously great because you're actually slowing your opponent down, potentially gaining you potentially 2 or 3 sort of turns. You can win against most of some of your bad matchups purely by unlocking an alternative win condition, trapping a Pokemon in the active spot. Your opponent may not need to forward to get energy, or they need to get item cards to actually get energies out. For example, like Energy Switch in Terra Box, you can trap in a knocked out, and you can pretty much win on the spot then and there because they might not have any outs to really draw into this one. It's perfect in the mirror match. You want to like set up the matchup. You could gain a couple sort of turns with Budew. Heck, you may even run likes of Bravery Charm or Luxury Escape, making your Budew turns even longer. Instead of just 3 if you're in the Budew sort of war. Obviously, this is just so powerful, that item lock. You already thrive under this by having a great sort of draw engine as well. You don't need to rely too much on Rare Candy anymore, or if you do have likes of TM Evolution. So I generally think that Budew is incredibly good. It answers all of your bad matchups. It helps kind of like extend the game a little bit longer, or generally have that alternative win sort of condition in the late style game. Another attack you have in the deck is Blood Moon Ursaluna, which obviously is your big late game attacking option, 240 damage, but needs 5 energies to attack. So that's where the likes of the Season Skill ability is really powerful. Blood Moon can use the attacks 1 color less for each prize card your opponent has taken. If they've taken 5 prize cards, also you can use Blood Moon for free, do 240 damage, or with a Defiance spell, 270 damage, which is very powerful. That number is obviously very relevant. Like I mentioned before, with the likes of Hawlucha, you can actually hit these huge 280 HP behemoths like Zoroark and other sort of good sort of Pokemon as well. Or it can get the big one-hit KO on Golding as well. Obviously, you have a lot of HP. You can tank a few turns as well and can easily be recycled with the likes of Night Stretchers, which you play plenty of in your deck. And finally, we'll look at some other sort of key sort of cards which are seen in a bit of play, which is that Monkey Dory. We kind of saw this a little bit pop up in the sort of the pure sort of Pulsar build with no really running the Dusknoir ones. And obviously, it's very powerful kit to move that damage counts around, protecting your sort of side as well. You're offsetting some of the game rails, potentially some of your Pokemon out of range from KOs from the opponent one. It's obviously great in the mirror match. You can take some prizes in between turns as well, removing likes of Badu or setting up some KOs as well from later on, which I think is really, really good. That could just win some of the matchups as well. We always see Monkey Dory kind of, it's similar to the case of, I feel like, Liz Clefairy. It's nearly every single deck it can have. As long as you've got space for a Dark Surgery and a Monkey Dory, you can just add this card in here because it's incredibly powerful. You already own Crispin, so you play another way to get energies around and get it out from the deck and attach to Monkey Dory, as well as also still attaching to your own Dragapults, which is still very, very scary, offsetting the sort of prize trait, which is really, really good, especially if we move around the damage counters. Now, finally, why on earth which aspect should be playing at the moment? And I've seen lots of people talk about, is it Unfair Stamp? Is it Crystal? I was definitely leaning more towards Crystal, but now I'm kind of favoring towards Unfair Stamp. Why I think Unfair Stamp is so good? Because it has hand destruction, which is absolutely key. It's exactly how Dragapult can really sort of win. Disrupt your opponent, making them only have 2 sort of cards in hand, especially under item lock. They could be really difficult. They may not be able to have any sort of win conditions as well. Obviously, it's powerful teamed up with the likes of a counter catcher, trap something in the active spot. They have to force to try and get energy. You can build up sort of turn. You obviously can build up your sort of board state and then go into attacks late style game. Badu as well can do that little bit of cheeky sort of 10 sort of damage, which can actually again set up the KOs with Phantom Dive later on. It can help you win against Terrorbox or Trapagos, as their sort of draw factors is purely just knocked out. Removing them from play, removing them from the hand, can be very difficult for them to actually get back into it. And also, it's like I mentioned before, it's perfectly paired with likes of Badu and can easily be searched out from likes of Arvin. Again, so can Crystal, but if you can just Arvin to also use that as literally as a draw supporter, it's even better and so strong. And also, you have so much draw on board, you won't even be disrupted if your opponent does play Unfair Stamp against this one. So again, that's another reason why I think Unfair Stamp is so powerful. It has that hand disruption, which can be really key of winning so many of your poor or even sort of matchups. But why on earth should we play Sparkling Crystal? Well, it helps you actually attack a lot sooner, and it's actually perfect in the mirror match. In the mirror match, if you are playing the Noir sort of matchup, one has Sparkling Crystal, one has Unfair Stamp. The Sparkling Crystal one, normally I feel like can actually get the win much early on if they don't really play that much energy acceleration, because you can attack much, much sooner. You can attack as early as turn 2, and the deck which really plays Crystal is much more aggressive to kind of like execute the strategy as quickly as possible. It is that extra attachment as well. But if we're seeing Jamming Tower kind of like pop up quite a little bit more, we are seeing it kind of appear in some Terror boxes, so there's also definitely a lot of these Raging Bolts. Sparkling Crystal may not be as strong anymore, as it's just kind of a dead sort of card as well, and you would need that 2 energy to actually attack with your Dragapult in the later style game. So generally, which one are we talking about? Both of them are very, very powerful. If you want a faster game, if you want to be very much more aggressive, and that kind of favors your playstyle, that's where Sparkling Crystal is much stronger. Or if you want to be more disruptive, a bit more slower, you want to really appreciate how powerful Badu Lock can be, that's where Unfair Stamp is even better. But also a key sort of thing is, see what the top players lean towards and kind of like go about that. Try both sort of options out. I was purely just always playing Sparkling Crystal, but now I've kind of been turned ahead and actually going to Unfair Stamp. I think it is just such a powerful sort of aspect right now, being that disruptive capability. I think after seeing how powerful it is and gaining multiple of the finals right now, Unfair Stamp is definitely, I think, the clear best way to play Dragapult. But if you really kind of want to help in a mirror match, if you're expecting your locals to be nearly 30% Dragapult, or if you want to be much quicker, that's where Sparkling Crystal, I think, really has its merit and time to shine. So let's actually look at some deck lists and see which ones are doing really well in this new sort of format. The first one, let's look at Andrew Hedrick's second place Atlanta Regional Finning list. And I think here, this is a perfect example of how Dragapult EX is really kind of piloted. We can see here it does play a 2-2-1 line of Dusknoir. It's a big sort of change from the Prismatic Evolution format, which focused on a 2-1-2 line of Dusknoir. I think why we've kind of gone back into this one is we've really seen how valuable Dusclops really is in this format. That 5 damage counter is crucial for that setup. You can KO these 90 HP Pokemon, or even like some Monkey Dories as well. Put the 5 damage counters on Monkey Dory, and then use the Phantom Dive 6 damage counters to get the KO on this one. We can see we're focusing more on the 2 copies of Badu, not really focusing on one, as we want to be a bit more slower approach. And that's where Badu, I think, really works in to this sort of style of matchup in the game. But again, we see the supporter line here. We're seeing 4 Ionos and only 2 copies of Arvin, because we want to be more aggressive. We want to draw into our cloaks as quickly as possible. That's why I believe we have gone to that 2 copies of Research, which I really, really like. So there's also 2 copies of Jock as well. Jock, absolutely love this card. It's our replacement of Lance. We used to play Lance to get our cloaks, as well as also our Dragapults. Now we play Shock, which can also get out our Dusclops, our Dusknoir, as well as also our cloaks as well, which is kind of really where it's focusing on. But we have a lot of sort of disruption as well, kind of like bossing out any sort of thing like gusting effect. 2 boss order, 3 copies of Countercatch, as well as also 3 copies of Night Stretcher. Really favouring actually gaining in the energies as well. So it's also reutilizing your Dust Noirs or Dusclops as quickly and as effectively as possible. And Countercatcher as your main form of Gust. Team out with likes of Iona could be very, very disruptive against your opponent. We've seen it also is playing the Halucha, but also the Pheasantipity and Blood Moon Ursaluna. Again, nothing too surprising overall. But one thing which you may notice is only 1 copy of Rare Candy and 1 copy of Luxurious Cape. Candy, because you're not really want to be that slow sort of like you're a bit more slow with the 2 copies of Badu. You want to go for that setup first and then go into the attack. So you don't really want to get out your Dragapult out as quickly as possible. Red Candy is mainly only really there, I feel like, for Dusknoir, get that out as quickly as possible, which I think is really, really strong. And also Luxurious Cape is actually to protect yourself from Welshram Mass Ogopon. You don't really want to be having a Dreepy out there. If you chuck a Bravery Charm on, it has 120 HP. It gets KO'd on the bench. But Luxurious Cape in this one, also that Dreepy is now protected. If it's got an energy on this one, even better. Yes, you may not have a rescue board on this one, but you aren't playing Crystal. That Dreepy is fine. You want to protect it as much as possible. So I really, really like this deck. One thing you may notice, it doesn't have that much energy acceleration. No EXP share, no copies of the likes of Crispin. So you're going with a slow manual approach of attaching energies. That's where Badu really kind of thrives in this style of deck. Or we can have a look at the first place at the Champions League over Japan. We can see here they are focusing more on Crystal, and it is very, very different. A 3-2-1 line of Dusknoir, so a very, very aggressive, very thick line. 1 copy of Tatsugiri, also has the likes of Defiance Powered, Technical Machine Evolution, less copies of Countercatcher and Night Stretcher, as well as also more copies of Nestball as well, but no copies of Jacques and a higher count of Arvin. Now, there's a few reasons. Number one, Japan plays a best of 1. They want to be as fast and aggressive as possible. They want to get your Dragapults out, attacking pretty much as early as turn sort of 2 or as late as possible turn 3. Because obviously if you get a tie, it is a double game loss from both sort of people. So you're not really want to be having that Badu sort of trap sort of lock in there. So you want to be attacking as quickly as possible. So having multiple copies of your Dusknoirs, have a thicker line of that, having a thicker line of your Dragapults, and having that Sparkling Crystal, you kind of want to go in that one as your energy acceleration. Again, they don't pay Crispin, they don't pay EXP share. I'm definitely in favour of much preferring this one, but we can see here this build is a much more tailored towards that best of 1 sort of format. Having the likes of the Tatsugiri, make sure you can draw into your Arvin and Iono as quickly as possible, which obviously is very, very key. And the idea is you're playing 2 copies of Team Evolution. That's always going to be your main sort of point of actually drawing it into your cloaks, your Dusclopses, and kind of going in that sort of way as sort of the main sort of engine of a deck, and not really relying on having the Badu item lock turn 1, using the likes of Team Evolution instead. Or we can have a look at the Carissa Jones, their top 4 sort of list here. And one thing you may notice is there is no copies of Dusknoir or anything like that. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this one, because both top 4 players from Atlanta did actually play similar build to this one, but Carissa's testing partner did also get top 8 as well. That's kind of why I'm showcasing this list as well. So the big differences you're seeing in all of these lists is Crispin, Monkey Dory, Bravery Charm, and Brock's Scouting. None of these cards have really popped up before. As well as also that Luminous Energy. Now, Luminous Energy, I think, is a really big surprise, and we're seeing it kind of like pop up a lot more in Dragapult. We saw it see the top 16 placements quite a lot over in the previous Champions League in Japan. It is basically an additional energy. You can have pretty much any sort of thing. Attach it to a Dragapult, the only psychic energy, well, that's now your fire energy. Or you can attach it to Monkey Dory, and that's your darkness energy. That's why I think it's absolutely crucial and so powerful right now in the format. Obviously, you can't really search out from likes of Crispin or Earthen Vessel, but having this a guaranteed card, which is any of the 2 energies you need, is so vital for Dragapult sort of strategy. We're seeing here, but really just focuses on more having the attacking with Blood Moon in the later style game by having 2 copies of Churro. It's great, you want to have that protection, you want to pick up your Dragapults and not really get the opponent get an easy KO on them. Or set up some KOs for later sort of term. But also seeing that is why I think Dragapult is so good. We're seeing it actually plays Artisan, which was one of the first time we've actually really seen these stadium cards really pop up in Dragapult. Obviously, it's great to get out your Dreepies, and you really want to focus on this in this style of deck. This build is much stronger against the likes of these the Dusknoir builds, because in Dusknoir, you're going to be popping over, you'll be giving them prize cards, you'll be setting up your prize, your sort of prize out much early on. But in this sort of build, they're not giving you those extra prize cards. You're unlocking their blood. You may not unlocking Blood Moon a bit quicker by taking those extra prize cards, but Because of this one, Dragapult, this build is much stronger with Unfair Stamp and going that sort of way as well. And as well, you need to get these big one-hit KOs. This deck here is absolutely fine. One big difference is they don't play like sort of Luxurious Cape, which I feel like after the past few weekends, definitely I feel like that'll be included, especially going into Severe Regionals. Sorry, special event. And this is kind of where I'm at right now with Dragapult. Very similar to likes of Andrew Hedrick, some second place sort of lists, but there's a few sort of differences as well. The first one is I do play one copy of Crispin and one copy of EXP Share. I like NG acceleration. I think this is absolutely crucial for Dragapult. You want to be fast, you want to be aggressive sometimes at the time, or generally when you're setting up, having that Crispin, this NG acceleration, you spread it around your cloaks, I think this is super, super crucial as well. It can unlock your Dragapult much earlier on. I used to be Crystal, but now I've kind of been changed over to way for Unfair Stamp. I just think Unfair Stamp is just so strong right now. I think it's incredibly powerful, and above all else, it helps you win some of these really sort of poor matchups you have facing as a Dragapult player. And overall, I just love this deck. I think having the 2/2 1-line Dusknoir is the best way to play this one. Two copies of Badu, definitely, as you really want to be focusing on that sort of attacking in the early style games. But also having the Halucha as well for that extra sort of it's the damage counter sniping as well. So let's actually look at the threats. What are the threats and the key sort of cards which actually is making Dragapult kind of be a bit more nervous right now? The first one is Wellspring Mask Ogerpon EX. Why is this so powerful? Well, for that torrential pump attack, 100 damage, and then you may shuffle 3 energies attached to this Pokemon if you do 120 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So this can get rid of 2 my GPs as early as turn 2. Especially in Terra Box, they just need to get a Crispin, Sparking Crystal from their knocked out, and they've got us on these big streamline attacking turn after turn after turn. Why is this so scary right now? Well, we said goodbye to Manaphy, and we have no bench protection outside the likes of Relor. And we're not really going to be utilizing removing likes of a Badu turn 1 item locking when we're going to use a Team Evolution, and also now we've clogged up a bench source space to have that one copy of that 1/1 line of Relor and actually taking up that crucial deck space as well. So obviously it can be very, very difficult as well. And obviously if they get this powered up, it could be really, really devastating. The cape is that important protection, it really needs it. Now obviously Bravery Charm, I mentioned before, if they're attached to a Dreepy, they only have they then go to 120 HP, which still is KO'd by Torrential Pump on the bench. So having the cape, they go up to 170 HP, the energy on that Dreepy is now protected, and you can KO it. But it can be very difficult to actually get this response KO without the likes of Band, Halucha, ping up their Countercatcher, Boss's Order. You need so many sort of moving pieces as well. I think it can work well under the likes of having the crystal, but I think this is very, very, it can really slow you down completely with that torrential sort of pump, and that's something you need to really be careful about moving forward. So ideally, you want to be setting up all your Dreepies out in play, or your Duskulls, you want to have the full sort of bench, make sure you have a Badu in the action spot, because you don't want to give them 2 sort of copies of Dreepies to get that KO. So that's something to really sort of think about moving forward for the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon. Bench sort of damage is really, really scary. But another really scary deck is Lily's Clefairy EX. With that Fairy Zone ability, the weakness for each of your opponent's Dragon Pokemon is now Psychic. With a Full Moon Rondo, 20 plus 20 more for each bench Pokemon in play. If you have the full bench, the opponent does. Obviously, it's hitting for 120 damage times 2, 240. You just need a couple sort of Pokemon on the bench, and all of a sudden, it's seeing that huge one-hit KO potential. It's that absolutely terrifying right now, and it is so low maintenance to be set up, and easily can be streamlined. Most people are just playing one copy of Lily's Clefairy X with 1 Psychic Energy, as long as they're playing like some Night Stretch and Crispin. This is obviously the absolute must-have conclusion. We've seen it in Terra Box, we've seen it in Terrapagos, we've seen it in, obviously, importantly, Gardevoir as well. Is it incredibly scary in Gardevoir? Because now all of a sudden, Gardevoir can use its Scream Tails, it can use its Gardevoir itself, so it's also the Drifloon as well, to actually get the big one-hit KO on your own opposing Dragapult EXs. Or it can copy Mew EX, copy Dragapult's attack, and also now can take 3 prizes by KOing the likes of your active Dragapult EX with Mew, as it now hits for weakness, but also getting rid of either some Dreepies, some Dragapult, some Dracloaks as well. Because you have Monkey Dory, move around the damage counter, it can make it very, very scary. And obviously, we're now seeing the likes of Team Rocket's Mimikyu, which can basically do exactly the same thing as Mew, but as a single prizer against Dragapult, which can be really, really scary, especially with Lily's Clefairy EX. Obviously, I think this is very, very scary right now. There are obviously ways around this one. You can try and easily respond. It does only have 190 HP, so you can easily KO it with Phantom Dive. But if they do play a Bravery Charm on this one, you do have to use a Dusclops. So you have to know exactly when you are going to be using your Dusclops in Dusknoir, because if they've just taken 3 prizes, you don't want to give them additional one, i.e. a 4th prize, when they can easily just promote another Liz Clefairy can easily be done from just a Night Stretcher. So again, something to really think about as a huge sort of threat going forward. And the last big sort of threat I think right now is poison. Donking right now is terrifying for this deck. It was terrifying in the Prismatic Evolutions format. It is just going to be even more terrifying right now. Why do I think this is so good right now? Because it has its low HP basics you have. It can easily be KO'd. You're mainly going to be starting with 60 HP, 70 HP Pokemon and going in blind, and the opponent says they want to go first. You want to try and get another bench Pokemon out there, or a Pheasantipity or Blood Moon, something you can easily kind of like soak up a hit for a few sort of turns. But also, they deny you from Pheasantipity because it's KO'd during in between turns, so it's not during your opponent's turn. They deny you from like of Unfair Stamp as well. So many sort of key sort of cards that actually removes sort of your strategy, which can be really, really scary. Plus, pairing it with Archaladon is absolutely terrifying. Now suddenly they have a way to get this big one-hit KO. The Stadium, the Poison Mochi, with having going into Petron as well if they get KO'd. It is so scary right now in this sort of format, which I'm really, really worried to see exactly how this deck can really kind of like go forward. Sequencing is also very crucial about why Dragapult is doing so well. So the first big thing is, what do you want to do first? Pheasantipity or Dracloak? Which should you draw through first? Well, if you said Pheasantipity EX, that'll be correct. Why I think it's so powerful to do this one is Pheasantipity, you want to know exactly the key cards you want to draw into this one, then going with the choices which Dracloak really has to offer. For example, say you're at the end of game and you know you need boss's orders and rare candy because you've got your Dragapult, you've got the energy set up on your Dreepy, so you know you need that one, but you need boss's orders and rare candy to get into this one. And you use your cloak first, and you see both of them in the hand. Now all of a sudden you have to like choose one of this one, or even after that, and then go Pheasantipity, and you don't draw any of those sort of key sort of pieces. But if you went with Pheasantipity first, you get both of the sort of key cards as well. You don't need to worry about the thinking as well. Go for the choice where you don't need to think first before going into the one afterwards, which obviously is very important. But going into the cloak, when is it best to shuffle the deck or draw from the top? Knowing with Iona and knowing your prizes. What's so crucial about this one? Very similar to like how Matang sort of worked as well, which actually was released in the same sort of set. With your cloak, you obviously put in a ton of cards at the bottom of the deck, similar thing likes of Iona as well. So with this sort of this, you want to know exactly when you should be shuffling it. If you know that you've put down 3 Dragapults at the bottom of your deck and you know you're not going to see anything because you've gone through lots of your Ultra Balls already, that's when it's good to use an Ultra Ball, like for Nest Ball, Artisan, or but anyway, Puffin really randomize the deck to have a higher chance of drawing into them in the later style game. Or if you know you've got loads of energies in the bottom of the deck and you want a Crispin, well, now all of a sudden I have unlocked this sort of item as well. You want to know exactly when you need to be shuffling the deck and when it's actually good to actually know when to actually utilize certain sort of key cards as well. Also, when you should be prioritizing, when should you be prioritizing item lock? Well, Item Lock is obviously very strong in nearly every single matchup, but in next it's really focused on a very sort of key number of a ton of item cards. Things like the Rare Candy and Gardevoir. They obviously want to get their Rare Candy Gardevoir out. They want to use theirs, either their Brilliant Blender or their Secret Box as quick as possible. So kind of like Item Locking them, you're in a really good sort of situation. Or if you're in an item locking deck like Raging Bolt, which can obviously function very well under item lock sometimes, well, you really might not be saving out your time just chucking in a single price Pokemon in the active spot and denying them from having that prime catcher against your Dragapult on the bench. So also, when should you be start attacking? This kind of like goes in with that item lock. How long should you be going to this one? Should you do it 2, 3, 4 sort of turns? All of it kind of goes into personal preferences, but it's also how you're playing sort of different sort of matchups, which I think is obviously absolutely crucial. You already have a great sort of board state. You don't really want to go out of attacking that option when you only have like 1 Dreepy and no Dracloaks. Or if you've got a board state with obviously 3 Dracloaks and one of them has now gotten into a Dragapult, you're probably in a much better strong board state as well, instead of just a lone Dragapult against the rest of the world. So these sort of sequencing ideas really accelerates you and puts you in a much higher place. Knowing Pheasantipity before you play Dracloak, always for time, knowing when you should be shuffling the deck, but also drawing from the top of the deck. If you know you've got some keys or pieces at the bottom of the deck, try and randomize it to have a higher chance of drawing into them in later sort of game. Or if you know you actually have a stronger likelihood of drawing in boss, try and go into that one if it's top of the deck and you know it's guaranteed not at the bottom, like in the end sort of style game. And then knowing when you should be starting breaking the item lock as well. That's absolutely crucial and absolutely key for making Dragapult be as strong as possible. So let's actually look at the matchup sort of guide, and this is kind of outlining some of the strongest decks right now in the format right now. You have some pretty good favorable ones like Dragapult, Flareon EX, as well as also Feraligatr. So many even matchups like Zoroark, Trapagos, Golden Go, Raging Ball Ogerpon, as well as also Terrabox, and some of the unfavorable ones as well, like Scarlet, the brand new Joltik box, Caladon, and Optimization EX. So looking in here, you can see that your favorite matchups aren't any of these sort of key sort of big sort of powerhouses right now. There's no Gardevoir, no Trapagoses, no Terrabox right there in your hugely favorable one. So why should you be playing Dragapult right now? Well, because I can kind of come back from behind, all of these sort of matchups, I can easily win against this one. And definitely you will as well, go putting in that time and effort, which is really where the deck really rewards it. Most of the even decks right now are quite a lot of the field right now. Yes, Gardevoir has gone back-to-back winning major events, so if you have a really poor Gardevoir matchup, maybe it's time to put Dragapult down just a little bit, or understand exactly what you should be doing now to really eke out the better, higher sort of chances of actually getting that win. But also, the meta is constantly changing. We've seen that Joltik box. The reason I put it in that unfavorable, if we actually look at the matchups online, we can see how they pretty poor time. Very, very scary with the Iron Hands, as well as also the Miraidon. So if you don't get that spread sort of damage counters on this one, they can obviously roll away with the game completely as well. If you have Joltik having 30 HP, you can easily KO this one, or even like some Monkey Dory. You play that one to move it around this one, but it can be very, very scary. They can set up Pikachu, get these big one-hit KOs against you one, and you can't KO Pikachu unless it's got a damage counter on beforehand. Well, Arcadon, very, very scary as well. And even matchups as well. So overall, I would say Dragapult does have a pretty good time in nearly every single deck as well, and has a winning sort of strategy as well. So right now, I want to look into some decks a little bit more in detail. The decks which I think are going to see a lot more sort of play, and the decks which I think you should really know, especially going into these tournaments going forward. So the first one obviously is Gardevoir, which is actually a bad sort of matchup. I kind of thought this was even, but I played quite a bit, but the more I've seen this one, definitely the more the Henry Chow sort of list as well is really, really scary. Obviously, the key point, especially when you're playing this one, is knowing when to put Dragapult EX in play. You don't want to put it out in play and not attack with this one because, well, you're just giving them basically a free 2-pricer. They can easily get out their Lily's Fairy, they can easily set up their big sort of scary support state and obviously win around that way. You need to watch out for double Monkey Dory. It hasn't changed at all from the Prismatic Evolution format, moving to basically doing 63 damage on any of your opponent's Pokemon when they have double Monkey Dory. It's really, really scary. They can now use Gardevoir EX to one-hit KO Dragapult if there is that Lily's Fairy out in play, and you can't really KO Gardevoir unless you have the likes of a Dusknoir. So you want to know exactly when you should be actually unlocking Dusknoir to get the KO. You also want to know exactly, be careful when you're spreading the damage counters. You don't want to put 6 straight on one Pokemon because, well, also now they can easily just move that 6 out with Monkey Dory. You want to spread it out as thinly as possible. Try and put 1 on everything and then 2 on something else. You want to give them as much of damage to move around with Monkey Dory. So as also, you want to move Clefairy obviously as soon as it comes into play. If that takes around for an extra sort of turn, well, you've given us potentially a 3 extra sort of turn as well. They can KO it very easily with having the Pheasantippi on the bench. If you have a full bench, they have a full bench, they can KO Pheasantippi, which again is really, really scary as well. So Gardevoir is a deck which you really want to focus more on that item lock. You want to have that sort of disruption against this one. You want to slow them down as quickly as possible and then go into your Dragapults in the later style game. You want to do that when they have that full bench, under an item lock, under a hand disruption. You want to give them this massive sort of hand size so they can easily get out of the Lily's Fairy. No, you want to remove that from play as much as possible. And I think that's pretty much one of the best ways to win Gardevoir going forward. But do and hand disruption. Speaking of another sort of bad sort of matchup, is our Caladon. And I feel like with Poison, this deck is nearly absolutely unwinnable. Other Dragapult players may talk differently. They think they have a great sort of matchup in this one, but I think it'll be really, really scary. They can win on the spot. If you just don't draw an extra store Pokemon or don't draw a Pokemon with a lot of HP, they can basically win in as quick as 5 minutes. As long as you start with this one, they get all their bench Pokemon out there. They're in an absolutely great sort of time as well. With the poison, with the Stadium, with the Mochi, you could pretty much use a Metal Defender to get the big one-hit KO on Dragapult EX, especially with Monkey Dory as well. Really, really scary right now against the format. Obviously, they can deny us using the unfair Pheasantippi from KOing us in between turns, which, if you think about it, Pheasantippi is a great sort of draw engine. I mentioned before how powerful it is. It doesn't give us that choice. It guarantees us the 3 extra cards. We don't have to sit there umming and ahhing and think which one do we need to have the best sort of option. Pheasantippi gives us that answer, and it's removed because we are knocked out in between our turns. So that's also, they can tank a ton of sort of damage. They can tear away all the damage as well. So obviously we need 300. That is basically a Dragapult plus a Dusknoir to get a big one-hit KO. And it can be very difficult to like try and get this big one-hit KO all the time. So you want to aim to set up these multiple sort of attacking options. Go for their support Pokemon, their setup. They have Squawkabilly. They have the Brute Bonnet. They have the Petron. They also have the likes of either Petron EX or sometimes even having the Latias as well. So go for these sort of supporting Pokemon as well, which can really help you kind of like focus on get big sort of wins. But if you leave Arcanine unchecked, it could be a very, very scary matchup. And also, item lock, Budu gets resisted by Arcanine, so you're not getting extra sort of chip damage every single time to help you sort of win in these sort of matchups. And they have obviously Duraludon, which are 30 damage for 1 energy, instantly KOing the Budu. So again, just things to really think about going in to this sort of new sort of format as well. Poison could be very, very difficult to go around this one. The idea is really only way how to win this one is, I feel, go for the support Pokemon and try and bench more than one Pokemon. If you see someone wanting to go first, try and do this one, or I hope you start a Physical or Blood Moon, otherwise you are out of the game. Another one, which I think is even such bad matchup, is Golden. These sort of decks as well are going to be much more popular. They're nearly always going to be 10% at a meta game. So the best way to win against Golden is item lock them and hope for the best. Because obviously they're symmetrical types, so they do resist the likes of Badu. But if you deny them from having these their Energy Search Pro, if you deny them from the Earthen Vessel or Superior Energy Retrieval or things like that, it can really slow down Golden. They already have a lot of draw factors. So hand locking them, disrupting their hand won't really do too much for this one, but likes of Unfair Out could be very, very devastating. They need a lot more cards to kind of like team up with this one. And you could set up multiple sort of KOs as well. You need a Dusknoir to actually get the KO. If you have the likes of Dusclops, which outside of likes of spread sort of damage, you can Dusclops plus the likes of a Holucha, then Countercatch or Boss's Orders on the bench one to do that 200 damage. You can get the KO on Golden that sort of way. Or the idea is you do 200 to one Golden 6 damage counters to the bench, and then you can like boss out the other one, and then get 4 prizes that way. But they're obviously going to be having the Monkey Dory. They want to move around the damage counters on this one. Right now, they're a lot more aggressive in their draw engine by having the Dunsparce, by also having the Dunsparce EX, which can be an alternative win con as a good sort of attacking option in a late style game to get that big one-hit KO on Dragapult, or more importantly, you're supporting Pheasantiples and Bloodmoon Ursaluna on the bench. So again, just some things to really think about in Golden. It's a deck which really thrives about you actually want to do item lock. You want to deny them from actually getting this setup. They don't really have ways to really get the energy outside of just drawing into them manually with coin bonus. If you can deny just that a little bit with Budu and locking something in the actual spot, you could be in a very good sort of spot and definitely make it much more of an even sort of matchup. The other one is Raging Bolt. This kind of went from being a poor matchup to kind of being an even one because it's a much slower sort of deck right now. Before you had the likes of Pokestop, you had Greninja, you had Trekking Shoes. You were drawing through pretty much half of your deck straight away. And all of a sudden you were using the Belarus Thunder to do 70 times, they do so much sort of damage, getting the 5 energies at 350 damage, which is really, really scary. But right now, they're using the Noctowl engine. They're a little bit slow. They want to get the easy sort of setup. They're playing Crispin as well, so they're not going to draw into that sort of key sort of extra cards through Sada for their energy acceleration. And like I mentioned before, they need 5 energy to get the KO, so ideally, you want to go for their setup Pokemon. You want to set up their Hutus. They may not be running the likes of these Brovia Charms, which likes of the Terapagoses and likes of Terraboxes are playing, so there's spread loads of damage counters down there, and it's easy to take those multiple prizes out away. That's where you have the likes of Dusclopses getting multiple prizes. That's way it's perfect. But also, you want them to take the first prize. You want them to take a single prize KO. You do not want to hit them a 2-prize KO. As soon as Raging Bolt takes that 2-prize KO, it is instantly going to be in the lead, and it can be very, very difficult for you to claw back for that absolute win. So that's something to really think about. So it's also, like I mentioned before, you want to use that Dusclops, you want to use that Dusknoir, but you need to be careful when you're going to use this one. This is a deck which thrives about constantly being very fast, very aggressive. It's 240 HP. You obviously need 4 damage counters on that Raging Bolt. They sometimes play heroes, so that's something to really think about spraying some of the damage out that round. But again, be careful when you are unlocking your Dusclops and Dusknoirs, because otherwise they can have this huge one-hit KO potential and go ahead in prizes. If you just use 2 Dusclops and Dusknoirs, they've taken a single prize KO. Well, now we need to take only basically the 2-prize KO Dragapult and then a bench Pokemon, which it can easily do with Fan Rotom. So again, there's something to really think about going into the Dragapult. And this is a deck which could do well under Item Lock, but just know that they play multiple ways to actually get that turn 1 attack, as well as also bench sniping capabilities with a baby Raging Bolt. Another one is Terapagos, which I actually feel like is sometimes can even be a bit more favored depending on how you play this one. And obviously, they can really focus on really either having their Noctowl engine or Buffon and take full advantage of this one. I've done quite a few matches against this one with my good friend Justin, who's obviously appeared on the channel multiple sort of times. And we kind of had this discussion that when you're playing Trapagos, you kind of focus on the early sort of time, which one you want first. Do you want Buffon to make Trapagos much more bulkier, much more beefier, sort of a tanky sort of attack? Or do you go Noctowl, really focusing more on the setup sort of cards? And this is the reason why I think this deck works really well. Again, Dragapult works really well into Trapagos if it does take that full advantage of trapping Noctowl in the active spot under item lock and then hand disrupt them while they're setting up. So all of a sudden you've trapped in a stage one, so they can't unlock it from Latias for that free retreat. But also they need to get the energy. They might need an energy switch. They might need a Crispin. They might need just to find an energy. And if you hand disrupt them to only 2 cards and they don't have access to gain other Noctowls, you could obviously be a much more stronger sort of situation. And also now we have to use a single prize KO to get rid of something, which obviously is very, very scary. Yes, they could tank KOs, but they can't really one-hit KO you very, very easily. So they're going to be doing that two-shotting thing. You could easily remove the likes of Bouffalance from that Dusclops to unlock the big one-hit KO. You can go around and KOing the support Pokemon, like the Muse, like the Lizcafairy, like the Antipodes and the Noctowl, go through that way and completely can sometimes ignore Trapagos EX. You want to go for their draw and setup. That's kind of how I've been winning most of the sort of style games. I won one game because I just went through Antipode, Counter Catcher, after the likes of Halucha plays, take 3 prizes from the Hutu, and also it can be very difficult for him to actually kind of like establish a good ball state when you're removing those extra sort of cards they might be drawing in, when you're removing those guaranteed trainer cards you really need to have. So aim for the multi-sort of prize as well. Be careful when you want to be using your prize mapping with Dusknoir, because obviously that's going to be the most key crucial thing going into this whole matchup. They're very tanky, they can't really one-hit KO you, and aim for their setup Pokemon. That's kind of where I've been going with my sort of strategy, and it's really worked so far. Another one is Terra Box. Obviously, this deck is really kind of built into having so many different range of attacking options, and kind of like the last big one I really want to talk about. Well, obviously, it's very, very scary because it has that torrential pump to get those 2 extra prizes. So you want to have a backup plan for this one. So bench out multiple sort of your GPs. Go full wide as early as possible. Get all of those Pokemon out because obviously you're going to be in a much stronger sort of situation if you get to do this one. Like I mentioned before in Trapagos sort of decks, you want to trap Nocturne in the active spot. They might need to get an energy switch. They might need to get the search for Earthen Vessel, and if you item lock them and hand disrupt them, well, they can't really get this, and obviously that's a great sort of way for you to take full advantage of this one. And if you take 4 if Noctowl is trapped in there for 4 turns and takes that 40 damage, well then that's now going to be a liability on their bench, and you can easily KO it from the likes of Dragapult. So again, something to really think about. You want to spread the damage out as much as possible. Exactly like the same thing with Trapagos, you want to map out the prize cards. You want to be very careful when you are using the Dusclops and Dusknoir, because if they do have that Mew, they are copying your own Dragapults. You want to be very careful that you need to know when to unlock it and when to actually be utilizing your Dusclops and Dusknoirs. So, hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I thought this was a good little key refresher to play what I think is one of the best decks right now to have. And the sort of key points I want to mention right now: prioritize your setup before attacking. Don't go straight into a turn 2 Phantom Dive. Takes a few sort of turns to set up. Under item lock as well, your opponent could really struggle. Check a couple of Ionas in as well. Check a couple Itchy Pollens as well. It can be very, very, very difficult for to really get into the game once you have a really big established board state and know the right sequencing. Know when you should decloak over like Serpentipede. Know when you should search for deck and hope to draw in from the top. If you know you've got some keys or pieces you need to have from the top of the deck and not at the bottom of the deck, really focus on that. And obviously, most importantly, have fun. This is a deck which is going to be very, very strong and constantly continuously to increase. If we're seeing more Gardevoir plays, maybe Dragapult numbers might decrease this a little bit, but it is such a fun deck. It's a deck which really rewards players in understanding it much further on, and I hope you guys have had a better understanding about why Dragapult EX is one of the best decks to play right now, but it's also one of my most favorite decks to play as well. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will see you in a few days' time for another sort of video like this, hopefully, and we'll get some testing videos very, very soon in the Destined Rivals format, where Dragapult EX does change just a little bit. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye for now.